The Senate will come to order. We are on order of business 4, reports of committees.
Mr. President, your Committee on Government Affairs, to which were referred Senate Bills numbers 28, 99, 147, 162, 210, 381, and Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2 is have the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Edgar Flores, Chair. End of reports.
Order of business 13, general file. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would note that Senate Bill 125 is currently on the third agenda, but was previously rolled to the next legislative day, and so is on your agendas in error. That has already been moved. Mr. President, I would also make a motion to take Senate Bills 171, 347, and 450 from their place on general file and place them on general file for the next legislative day.
Thank you. Oh, okay. I guess we got to vote on that. All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also move to take Senate Bill 451 from its place on general file and place it at the top of general file for this third agenda.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Senate Bill 451, introduced by Senator Cannizzaro, extends property tax imposed to employ police officers with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4, end of Section 4. This bill requires a two-thirds majority vote.
Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in strong support of Senate Bill 451. Senate Bill 451 is a sort of legislation that improves the communities that we live in, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. When someone finds himself in a situation, the victim of a sexual assault, the victim of an armed robbery, a shooting on the Las Vegas Strip, the people who are running into those situations, putting their own lives on the line while they have families at home of their own, the ones who are running into those situations, the people who do that in our communities, this bill is for them. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about Senate Bill 451 and what exactly this bill does. So I want to clarify the record on what exactly Senate Bill 451 does. Currently, in Clark County, there is funding that goes to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. That funding is dedicated to many officers as part of that department. By 825 officers, a quarter of the entire Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department force is funded with some tax monies that people pay in order to make sure that when something like that happens, a sexual assault, an armed robbery, a shooting, people are running into those situations to help. Half of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's patrol force is represented in those numbers. Half of the officers who you see every single day in your communities helping your constituents and serving Las Vegas, half of those patrol officers are funded with these funds. Half. Now, many of you on this floor know that I spent over a decade working as a gang prosecutor and a deputy district attorney in the Clark County District Attorney's Office. If Senate Bill 451 does not pass, I want to explain just a little bit about what that means, because that leaves the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in a very difficult situation. That situation is as follows. Number one, cut half of your patrol officers. Half. So if you are the victim of a sexual assault, if you are the victim of an armed robbery, if there is a shooting that happens, half of the available people who could respond to those situations will no longer be employed by the police department. They will not exist. I am sure that you can all imagine what that will do for response times, what that will mean for the victims of those crimes, to not have someone there to help. The other decision is that you take a bunch of detectives well-trained, seasoned, good at their jobs, and you put them into patrol positions so that you can maintain the safety of the communities we live in. As a gang prosecutor, one of the things that was always exceedingly helpful in my career was having a very dedicated detective unit to do in-depth investigations, because those cases do not come together all by themselves. They take a lot of time and energy, they take a lot of skill and dedication, and they take a team of people working to bring those cases to fruition, to have the evidence to be able to put together a racketeering case, to be able to take on violent gangs, to be able to make sure that you're keeping those communities safe. And so if you don't have that dedicated detective force, those kinds of investigations and those kinds of cases just don't exist. So for anybody who has stood on this floor and or brought a piece of legislation that deals with things like robbery, sexual assault, human trafficking, shootings, gang violence, you cannot support Senate Bill 451, then you should not be bringing those pieces of legislation. You should not be standing on the floor of this Senate to support them. This bill also doesn't do a few things. It doesn't raise anybody's taxes. Does not raise anybody's taxes. And if we don't pass this bill, it's not going to lower anybody's taxes either. That money will go elsewhere. It will not fund officers. Metro will have to cut half of the patrol officers, a quarter of their total force, over 800 police officers, or move their detectives doing some of these more intense investigations into patrol functions. But nobody in Nevada, and specifically Clark County, is going to receive a reduced tax bill. You just won't be funding officers. That money will fund other things, but it won't fund officers. So, inasmuch as this bill, I think, helps our communities, I think there are things that it doesn't do, and there's a lot of misconceptions about this particular piece of legislation. But ultimately, what I will say is that if I have a chance to stand on this floor and to support the hardworking men and women of law enforcement who are running into those situations, who are coming to help victims in our community, who are making our community safe, and if that somehow is twisted into something that is wrong or that we shouldn't be doing, by all means, I am happy to stand here and be wrong. I will be wrong every day that I am able to serve in this position, if that's what that means. So I just wanted to be very clear about the ramifications should this bill not pass, and to again remind everyone that these are the folks that we should absolutely be supporting. And I urge your strong support, members of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further remarks from the floor? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I'm honored to address you here today on this important subject, and I've always believed in my 33 years of being an elected official that my number one responsibility is public safety and supporting the men and women in blue. And 30 years ago, the citizens of Clark County made a decision to dedicate a certain portion of property taxes to go to hiring deputies. And my heavens, in the 30 years, how the valley has certainly changed. We have Formula One, we've got Allegiant Stadium, we've had the Super Bowl, we've had new casinos opening up. And if we want to protect ourselves as being the entertainment capital of the world, and soon to be the sports capital of the world, we need to ensure that we have people that are coming here and dropping billions of dollars a year, the security to know that we've got their back and we've got public safety that's going to keep them safe. I've been a strong anti-tax advocate all of my career, but this is not a new tax. This is basically the extension of a tax that had a 30-year window on it. And I think that the citizens, if they had an opportunity to step up to the plate today and say, do you think that your investment over the past 30 years was worth it? I would venture to say that 98% would say unequivocally yes, because we've had some great sheriffs, we've got great sheriff deputies, we have great police departments that work hard to keep us safe. So I rise in strong support of SB 451 to fund the police officers of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We all understand the critical role law enforcement plays in keeping our community safe, and this bill ensures our police force has the resources to protect over 2 million residents, countless businesses, and again, millions of visitors that come to Nevada every single year. We don't have a state income tax in this state, my friends, because we have people that come visit us and drop their hard-earned money here, and that subsidizes what we would have as a state income tax here. And the last thing you want is a reputation when you're bringing people there for tourism that it's certainly not a place that's safe. And I have to applaud our former governor, Joe Lombardo, who was a sheriff of Clark County, did an exemplary job. And certainly the present sheriff has certainly filled those shoes himself, and keeps us safe. By maintaining this voter-approved tax without bypassing existing abatement protections, SB 451 balances public safety and fiscal fairness. Without passing this bill, as you've heard before, we could lose up to 825 officers, half that are patrolling the Clark County as we speak. For these reasons, my friends, I urge a yes vote to keep the strength of our police and our communities together. I urge a yes vote on SB 451.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues, for your statements, strong statements on SB 451. I absolutely support law enforcement. As many of you know, I'm married to a retired sheriff who was in law enforcement for 34 years, and they struggle on how to pay for their officers all the time. So my no vote today is not going to be about not supporting law enforcement. My opposition to this bill isn't that Las Vegas needs safety. My opposition to this bill is not that I'm against public safety. My opposition to this bill is that the voters, it was put to a vote of the people in 1996. And at the time when they voted because it was going to expire in 30 years. And my belief is that it should go back to the voters, or at the very least, as we do in this body, as we do on this very bill, it is a 2/3 vote of this body to pass this bill. And we have that for a reason. This bill circumvents that 2/3, it's a 2/3 vote, but it's circumventing the municipalities and county commissioners, their 2/3 vote, and even more, is circumventing a vote of the people. So for that reason, not because I'm against law enforcement, this bill could have been written to address my concerns. So I will be a no vote on this as a process, not because I'm against law enforcement. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Senate Bill 451, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Senate District 21, a large part of Senate 21 that I represent is the Sunrise Manor. And for years and years, I've had my neighbors, my constituents, pleading to me, we need a substation. We need a metro substation. Crime's on the rise. We really need something in Sunrise Manor. And our county commissioners listened. And just last month, they broke ground on the new Hollywood Area Command over at East Sahara and Hollywood. And my constituents are excited. They're really excited about more patrols and hopefully less crime. And I'm worried that if 451 doesn't pass, we're going to have a building that we can't staff. We've waited a long time in my district, and I don't want to see that happen. I urge its passage.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of SB 451 because I wanted to make a couple of comments. More cops has always been the jurisdiction of the legislature. It's been a consistent process for us to move and extend the sales tax for cops in this state. And when we talk about, and I respect my colleagues in this Senate chamber, but when we talk about circumventing the local government who we have specifically not given the power to raise taxes, we've given them very limited authority, but most of that authority rests within in the legislature. And I feel very strongly every time that we have made that a sliding scale argument that we should somehow give the county commission or the city governments, and then they turn around and tell the legislature how to spend money, how to raise revenue. We're flipping the coin. And so I want this body to always consider the power in which you're protecting when you sit in the seats of the legislature is the power to generate revenue. And that is a very strong power, and it should never be given to the local governments in a format where then they tell us how to use revenue and how to raise it or how to extend it. And I do recognize that there have been, the people voted for this in '96. I was aware of this policy last session, but at the same time that it expired, that allowed for the legislature to step in because that is the power given to us. And I respect that Dillon's rule has created that separation, and I want to maintain that separation, and I want to make sure that the legislature never gets so new that we believe that the power that we've gained to tell and dictate local governments how to act is somehow given away or scaled away. And so with that, I rise in support of SB 451.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 17. Oh, 1 second. Yeses are 17. The noes are 4. SB 451 has received a 2/3 vote, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 26, introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, revises provisions authorizing certain entities to obtain information relating to the records of criminal history of certain persons responsible for the safety and well-being of children, elderly persons, or persons with disabilities. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Daley. What? Senator Krasner. Picking the right one here. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 26 revises procedures to allow a qualified entity to obtain background information concerning independent contractors and vendors.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 26 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 27, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to museums. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 14, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2025. This bill requires a 2/3 majority vote.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 27 revises the names of 2 museums of the Division of Museums and History of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. The bill also revises the powers and duties of the Board of the Museums and History by requiring the board to establish policies and charges, for certain services provided by the division and its institutions, and emulating sole authority of the board to take certain actions concerning property received by an institution of the division.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 20, the noes are 1. SB 27 has received a 2/3 vote, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 30, introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, revises provisions relating to prisoners. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 30 removes the requirement for a notice and application to be submitted to a district judge to have a fine or forfeiture, remitted, a punishment commuted, a pardon granted, or civil rights restored. Further, the bill clarifies that the district judge may provide factual or non-character testimony regarding the release or detention of a prisoner and revises the requirements for a policy to provide an expedited process to restore the civil rights of a person to exclude an objection from the court. Finally, upon request, the bill requires the State Board of Parole Commissioners to disseminate records of decisions regarding parole to any person who requests such a record of a named prisoner, excluding personal identifying information after the prisoner or any victims have been notified of the decision. This bill is effective upon passage and approval.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 30 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 43, introduced by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services, revises provisions relating to environmental protection. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Any amendments?
There are none. Section 35, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 43 revises the powers and authorities related to environmental protection duties of certain district boards of health and health districts acting as solid waste management authorities or administering and enforcing provisions governing public water systems. This bill authorizes the administrator of the Division of Environmental Protection to designate a district board of health or a health district as act as a solid waste management authority or public water systems authority if the district board of health reaches designation and demonstrates capacity to perform the programs designated thereto.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 18, the noes are 3. SB 43 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 72, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, revises the charter of the City of Henderson. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Any amendments?
There are none. Section 4, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Rogich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 72 revises the City of Henderson's charter. The bill revises procedures for filling vacancies in certain municipal elective offices, updates the process for enacting ordinances, and modifies provisions related to the safe and disposition of city-owned real property.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21 and noes are 0. SB 72 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 97, introduced by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, makes revisions to the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 97 provides that one of the 5 members appointed by the governor to the board of directors of the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange shall be a member of an Indian tribe located in this state with expertise in healthcare administration for an Indian tribe. This bill is effective on July 1, 2025.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 6 into Section 6. End of bill.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 97 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 101, introduced by Senator Daley, revises provisions relating to wildlife. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2, end of bill.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 101 specifies that the prohibition on wasting edible portions of certain wildlife applies to any big game mammal, which as defined in the bill includes but is not limited to a mountain lion and black bear. The bill requires the Board of Wildlife Commissioners to adopt regulations necessary to carry out the provisions on or before July 1, 2026.
Any remarks from the floor? Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 101. In our caucus, we had a discussion about it. We have agreed we're going to make a deal with the mountain lions. If they don't eat us, we won't eat them. So, in all seriousness, this is a big change. In our society, we don't eat dogs and cats, okay? And these are felines. These have been on the big game list since 1965, and at the time that was put on, it was never intended for mountain lions to be anything than what they are, which are magnificent predators, but they aren't an animal that in the West we eat. But it was very interesting doing the homework on this. Why don't we eat cats? Why don't we eat horses? And researching why we don't eat animals that eat other animals, carnivores, goes clear back, actually, to ancient Hebrew law. It goes back to Leviticus. We, in our society, eat animals that eat plants. We don't eat animals that eat other animals. And the answer is why? And, Moses, when he was writing this, had something to it. As I researched it, animals that eat other animals have significantly higher toxins, contaminants, higher levels of mercury, pesticides, all of which are detrimental to human health if consumed. That's why we don't eat cats in our society. So, as the people pushing this bill, too, just so you know, is Safari Club International. If you notice the very first name, Safari, these are wealthy to very wealthy hunters that go on safaris to Africa and other continents and like to do what's known as trophy hunting. And they've done a lot of research on this, and they've found that to remove some of the stigma against hunting animals, if you agree that you are going to eat the animal you kill, people have less opposition to it. And that's really the whole genesis behind this. What this bill requires is that if you kill a mountain lion, you now have to cut off all of the edible portions of the lion. It does not say, and we can't force people to eat something they don't want to eat. So this is one of those feel-good kind of things. We're going to basically say, okay, if you kill a mountain lion, you now have to remove all the meat, but we don't eat it. We don't eat cats. So, and there are very good reasons for that. It's also interesting, in Nevada right now, it is against the law to kill a cat for consumption. And there's federal laws that also make that illegal. So, and last thought, in 1965, it was 60 years ago that we actually put mountain lions on the big game list. At that time in Nevada, and for those of you that are interested in outdoor recreation, listen to these statistics. In 1965, there were an estimated 300,000 deer in Nevada, and there was an estimated 300 to 400 mountain lions. At that time, the federal government actually had a very aggressive predator control program. They had 3 full-time mountain lion hunters keeping the mountain lion populations in check. Jump from 1965 to 1985. Deer populations were at 200,000. Mountain lions were estimated to be about 800. Jump to now, 2025. Deer populations are at 65,000. Mountain lions are at 3,000. And there is a strong correlation between mountain lion populations and deer because that's their main prey. Now, what we really should be doing, especially for those of us who represent the rural areas, outdoor recreation, including hunting opportunities, is one of the #1 things that we do in the state of Nevada, and it's huge for rural Nevada's economy. And as we've watched this dramatic shrinkage in the number of animals available for people to hunt, you've also seen a dramatic decline in the economic opportunities in the rural parts of the state. So this is all related. In all honesty, if we were really serious about this kind of stuff, we would be expanding the ways that we remove mountain lions because they are absolutely harming our big game populations. It's impacting the economics. It's also strongly harming the opportunity for people to participate in an outdoor recreation that is very, very old and very popular in Nevada. So with all of that, and last thought, there's concern about waste. Wasting things is a man-made concept. When you, if you've ever, for those of you who've driven along the road, you've seen flocks of magpies and ravens. What are they doing? Well, they're eating the animals that were killed along the roadway. Nothing goes to waste in nature. The concept that if man doesn't eat it, is therefore wasted, is absolute nonsense. Nothing goes to waste in nature. In fact, if there is any waste, it's more on our side of things. So anyway, I would strongly urge my colleagues, we don't want to start a tradition in the West about eating cats. And this is a feline species. There are people that say it will tell you that it tastes good, and as a novelty, if you want to try it, go ahead. But to make it mandatory, and by the way, the penalty if you don't follow this, 12 demerits, you will lose your hunting, fishing, trapping licenses for up to 5 years under this kind of a thing. All in all, it's a feel-good thing for Safari Club International. We should not try to force people to eat things that they don't want to eat. There are very good reasons to continue strong predator control programs in the state of Nevada, which will benefit the big game in this population, which are animals we do traditionally eat. And the idea that if we kill something and man doesn't eat it, it therefore is waste, is a flawed non-issue. Nothing goes to waste in nature. So I would urge my colleagues, vote no on this. We don't need to start encouraging people to eat cats in Nevada, including big ones like mountain lions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 13, the noes are 8. SB 101 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 117, introduced by Senator Cruz Crawford and Assemblymember Moore, revises provisions relating to services for veterans. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. End of bill.
Senator Cruz Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 117 requires the Director of the Department of Veterans Services to make available to agencies and programs in the state that assist veterans and members of the military certain informational materials about applying for an upgrade in discharge status or changing the reason for discharge. Thank you.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 117 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 141, introduced by Senator Scheibel, revises provisions relating to local facilities for detention. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2. End of bill.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very proud today to rise in support of SB 141 and encourage all of my colleagues here to vote in favor of SB 141. I worked really hard with a large coalition of constituents, including law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officers, to ensure that we got SB 141 exactly right. And the purpose of SB 141 is to provide a pathway and to provide some guidelines for our detention facilities, our local county jails, to treat people who are trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming with dignity and respect when they come through the doors. It is a reality of life that people who are trans and gender non-conforming will become incarcerated. Not all of them. I don't mean to say that. I mean, it's a reality of life that we will have gender nonconforming people in custody in county jails and in local detention centers. And so as we grow as a society, as we learn to embrace people's differences and diversity, it becomes important that we all figure out how we're going to do that. And SB 141 makes a step towards answering that question. SB 141 says that every detention center or facility will develop a policy, and that policy will set forward the standards of procedure that that particular facility will follow when they have people come into their custody who are gender nonconforming or transgender. So at the heart of the issue, the one thing that is required by SB 141 is it requires a law enforcement agency that is going to be incarcerating people to take into account, to listen, to hear that person's preferences for where they want to be housed, how they want to be treated, the pronouns they would like people to use, the name they'd like to be called. And it does not require that law enforcement agency to do anything specific with that preference. It allows every individual detention facility, every individual sheriff's department, any agency that runs a jail or detention facility to determine how they will utilize that preference in making decisions. And the purpose of this is twofold. It is one, to ensure that people who are trans or non-binary are treated with dignity and respect when they come into a carceral facility. And number two, it is also to provide some guidance and to provide a policy, a statutory or a written provision that the facility can rely on when it comes to determining whether or not they are in compliance with the law and in compliance with their own policies. So to put it plainly, if somebody who is trans or non-binary, gender non-conforming is taken into custody somewhere in the state of Nevada and they think that they've been treated unfairly, if they go to address that complaint by way of filing a lawsuit, with SB 141 in place, every single facility will have a set of policies in place that says, this is what you're entitled to when you're incarcerated, this is what you're not entitled to. And so that will allow people on both sides of that lawsuit to say either, we followed our policy and it will keep our detention centers from having to pay out massive lawsuits because they will be able to point to the policy that they were following when they made a decision. Even if a transgender or non-binary person doesn't like the decision, if the facility follows their policy, they cannot be held liable or responsible for that. And on the flip side, if they do violate their own policy, it gives somebody who has been discriminated against some redress for that wrong done to them. And so I just want to reiterate one more time, and I know that the hour is getting late, but we worked really hard to come to a compromise on this bill that reflects the input from law enforcement agencies throughout the state. It doesn't require anybody to build a new facility, to implement a new training program. This bill is supported by law enforcement, by advocates for the LGBTQ community, and I hope it will be supported by all of my colleagues here in the Senate.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 13, the noes are 8. SB 141 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 187, introduced by Senator Pizzina, revises provisions relating to child welfare. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 18 into Section 18 into bill.
Senator Pizzina.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 187 requires child welfare agencies to make decisions regarding medical or mental health treatment for children in their custody within 14 days of consent being requested. Additionally, when necessary, this bill requires such agencies to make reasonable efforts to obtain consent from another person or entity or to initiate a court order within 14 days after the agency becomes aware of the need for treatment. Agencies must also notify the person or entity with whom the child is placed within 3 business days after obtaining the relevant consent, order, or denial. This bill is effective on October 1, 2025. And I would also like to say that I had the opportunity to speak to a number of foster parents with foster kinship groups, and it was touching hearing some of the situations that they had described, and I really hope this bill can help. Thank you.
Any further remarks from the floor? Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to rise in support of Senate Bill 187. I think this takes a step in what I feel there are many more conversations to be had surrounding the support for the families that are providing really important foster care for kids who just need someone to love them and a house to live in. And there are a lot of really great families out there who are taking in foster kids and loving them and caring for them as their own. I think the very least that we can do is make sure that when they are trying to seek treatment for those children, that they are given answers and the ability to do that in a reasonable time frame. I think that makes things imminently easier for families who are trying to do their very best to provide a loving home and family structure for kids who don't have it elsewhere. And so I am very supportive of this bill and encouraged by the beginning of this discussion, as we can certainly probably do more to help these foster families, help support these foster kids, but I would urge all of your support.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 187 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 203, introduced by Senator Pizzina, revises provisions relating to the pari-mutuel system of wagering. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 3, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Pizzina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 203 provides the state of Nevada, the Nevada Gaming Commission, the Nevada Gaming Control Board, the Off-Track Pari-Mutuel Wagering Committee, and certain other persons as immune from civil liability for any decision or action taken in good faith and without malicious intent in carrying out the provisions of law relating to the pari-mutuel system of wagering. Additionally, the bill authorizes a track where horse racing or other pari-mutuel wagering is broadcast to directly enter into an agreement with an operator of a racebook, sports pool, or gambling game, repeals existing provisions regarding the dissemination of such broadcasts, and provides that persons who operate, carry on, conduct, or maintain any form of wagering under the pari-mutuel system of wagering may be found suitable, registered, or proved to do so by the Commission. Finally, the bill provides that neither the off-track pari-mutuel system nor the operator of a system must be physically present in the state under certain circumstances, and this bill is effective upon passage and approval. Thank you so much.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 203 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move at this point, since we have been able to move a few bills, we will come back and vote on a few more things, but I would move that the Senate stand in recess. Well, first let me do one thing. Can we take the remaining bills on general file for this agenda and move them to the last agenda for this legislative day?
Okay, you've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senator Cannizzaro.
And then, Mr. President, I would move that the Senate stand in recess until 4:15 p.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are in recess. The Senate will come to order. We are now on the fourth agenda. Order of Business 4, reports of committees.
Mr. President, your Committee on Commerce and Labor, to which were referred Senate Bills numbers 93 and 311, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Julie Pizzina, Chair. End of reports.
Order of Business 8, waivers and exemptions.
We have no waivers or exemptions at this time.
Order of Business 9, motions, resolutions, and notices. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would note that pursuant to Senate Standing Rule number 91, I am giving notice to this body that starting tomorrow and going through August 22nd, 2025, we will be making a motion to dispense with the reprinting of bills on general file, and we'll be moving forward to vote on bills on general file as they are amended.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, we have a motion. What the heck? So, all right. Continue on, please.
Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 2, introduced by Senators Dignate, et cetera, recognizes the Fruit Loop as a historical LGBTQ landmark in Clark County, Nevada. End of resolution.
So are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 518, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
No objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to amend amendment number 518 to Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment revises provisions recognizing the Fruit Loop in Clark County, Nevada.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SCR2 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the resolution file.
That concludes Order of Business 9.
Order of Business 12, second reading.
Senate Bill 28, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to municipalities. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 under Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 493, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
No objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 493 to Senate Bill 28.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment removes proposed revisions to the threshold requirements relating to a reduction or subsidize of local governments of certain fees for a project for affordable housing.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 28 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 99, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, authorizes under certain circumstances certain governing bodies of a city or county to impose linkage fees on certain developers. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 489, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
There are no objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 489 to Senate Bill 99.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment adds provisions concerning remodeling certain types of properties.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 99 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 147, introduced by Senator Dondero Loop, creates the Southern Nevada Regional Planning for Economic Resiliency Pilot Program. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 500, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 500 to Senate Bill 147.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment revises provisions concerning the Southern Nevada Regional Planning for Economic Resilience Pilot Program and increases the number of members of its advisory committee from 5 to 9.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 147 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 162, introduced by Senators Cruz Crawford, Krasner, and Rogish, revises provisions relating to state financing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 502, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 502 to Senate Bill 162.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment applies to the provisions of the bill to state money and defines the term to exclude money which is received by the state from the federal government for distribution and use in this state pursuant to federal law or federal regulation.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 162 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 210, introduced by Senators Stone and Orenshaw, revises provisions relating to fees collected by constables and sheriffs for certain services. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 486, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
No objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 486 to Senate Bill 210.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment revises various fees collected by constables and sheriffs.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 210 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 381, introduced by Senators Orenshaw and Stone, revises provisions relating to governmental administration. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 484, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
Are there any objections? Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of amendment number 484 to Senate Bill 381.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment removes proposed revisions to certain fees for which a sheriff or constable is entitled for certain services.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 381 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 412, introduced by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, repeals provisions relating to financial institutions. People of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 365, proposed by the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendment 365 to SB 412.
You've heard the motion. Senator Neal.
Senate Amendment 365 changes the branch bank excise tax from a quarterly tax to an annual tax beginning FY 2028.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 412 is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file. Senator Dondera-Lupe.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bills numbers 147 and 412 be re-referred to the Committee on Finance upon return from reprint as necessary, as these bills may have a fiscal impact.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
That concludes order of business 12 on the fourth agenda.
Order of business 16, remarks from the floor, introduction of guests. Seeing none, we will go to the fifth agenda, order of business 4, reports of committees.
We have no reports of committees or waivers and exemptions at this time.
Order of business 12, second reading.
Senate Bill 93, introduced by Senator Daley, establishes certain labor standards for the award of grants of federal money by a state agency for certain purposes. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 2, proposed by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt amendment number 2 to Senate Bill 93.
You've heard the motion. Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 2 removes provisions that establish an exemption for a signatory to a collective bargaining agreement, authorizes each state agency that awards such federal grants to adopt regulations, and revises certain training program requirements, among other amendments.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 93 is ordered, reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 311, introduced by Senator Ellison, imposes certain requirements upon certain alarm companies. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 311, proposed by Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
There are no objections, so ordered. Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt amendment number 311 to Senate Bill 311.
You've heard the motion. Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 311 to Senate Bill 311 requires an alarm company to act within 5 business days after receiving notice from the customer to repair or replace the defective or inoperable alarm systems. And I just feel like this should have been Amendment 911 to Senate Bill 911.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 311 is ordered, reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
That concludes order business 12 on the second agenda.
The fifth agenda.
Sorry, fifth agenda. I don't know where we are.
Way ahead of you. All right, order of business 13, general file. Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move to take Senate Bill 215 from its place on general file and place it on general file for the next legislative day.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senator Canizaro.
Mr. President, if I would move for a very brief technical recess.
Okay, we are in recess.
Don't go anywhere.
The Senate is back in order. We again are on Order Business 13, General File.
Senate Bill 241, introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, revises provisions relating to juvenile probation. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2 and a bill.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 241 prohibits a juvenile court from placing a child on juvenile probation for a period of more than 18 months, regardless of the number of delinquent acts for which the child has been adjudicated a delinquent child, unless an exception applies. The bill also authorizes the juvenile court to terminate the period of probation of a child who has failed to make full restitution but has otherwise successfully fulfilled the conditions of his or her orders under juvenile probation. Any amount of restitution that remains unpaid by a child or guardian after the termination of probation constitutes a civil liability and remains under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. Finally, Senate Bill 241 requires the juvenile court to hold a hearing before suspending, modifying, or revoking the juvenile probation of a child and placing the child in a detention facility for children or in a county jail if the child is now over 18 years of age.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 241 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 266, introduced by Senators Taylor, et cetera, revises provisions governing the student loan repayment for providers of health care in underserved communities program. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2025, and a bill.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 266 expands the definition of provider of health care to include a marriage and family therapist, a clinical alcohol and drug abuse counselor, or a licensed or certified alcohol and drug abuse counselor, thereby making the benefits of the student loan repayment for providers of health care in underserved communities program available to such persons.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 266 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 274, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, revises provisions governing state boards and commissions. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 into Section 4 and a bill.
Senator Daly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 274 requires the chair of the Legislative Commission to appoint the chair and vice chair of the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission instead of the positions being elected by the voting members of the subcommittee. The bill repeals the requirement of the Sunset Subcommittee to conduct a review of certain professional or occupational licensing boards and other regulatory bodies in this state to determine whether the restrictions on the criminal history of an applicant for an occupational or professional license are appropriate. Lastly, the bill removes the requirement for certain professional or occupational licensing boards and other regulatory bodies to submit to the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau quarterly reports concerning petitions for the review of criminal histories of potential applicants.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 19, the noes are 2. SB 274 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 290, introduced by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, revises provisions relating to regional transportation commissions. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none, and a bill.
Senator Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 290 authorizes the designated security personnel employed by a regional transportation commission to remove a vehicle from a vehicle or other property of the commission any person who engages in a willful use of profane, offensive, or indecent language, engages in a quarrel in any public conveyance, interferes or annoys any passenger therein, or fails to leave such conveyance upon demand after having refused to pay the proper fare.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 290 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 297, introduced by Senators Wynn, Orangeville, and Scheibel, revises provisions relating to periods of observance. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 into Section 4 into bill.
Senator Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 297 designates the month of October each year as Menopause Awareness Month in the state. During that time, the governor shall issue annually a proclamation encouraging the observance of Menopause Awareness Month. Raising awareness about menopause is crucial for addressing the significant knowledge gaps that exist amongst women and healthcare providers. There are so many myths and misconceptions surrounding menopause. We barely are taught anything about menstruation when it begins, and we are certainly not taught about how it ends. What it looks like, what it feels like, what's normal, and what's not. Menopause is not just about hot flashes or mood swings. There are real long-term health risks. We know that women going through menopause are more likely to have cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, and other things that increase after menopause. But how can we advocate for ourselves and have informed conversations with our physicians when we don't even know what questions to ask? Awareness campaigns like this in this bill center on women's health, not only empower women to recognize and manage their symptoms, but also advocate for better healthcare training policies to ensure comprehensive support by fostering education, improving access to resources, and promoting community solidarity. Raising awareness about menopause will help women navigate these natural life transitions with confidence while enhancing overall public health outcomes. I know that we bring a lot of these months and people ask, why is this important? I think it's very important for the citizens of the state of Nevada, the women in this community and in our state that make up more than half of our population, to hear people at the highest levels of the legislature and the highest levels of the executive branch bring recognition and awareness and normalize these conversations that will hopefully bring better health outcomes for all women in our state. Thank you.
Any further remarks from the floor? Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's important to talk about these sorts of things. I think as women, we are often told that many of the things that we are feeling and experiencing, especially when it comes to healthcare and to different things that happen, are attributable to simply being a woman, and that we're supposed to just sort of deal with it. And I think that there is a lack of information. And I think that that is true when it comes to things like menopause. I think that is true when it comes to other hormonal changes. I think as many of you have experienced with me, I have been pregnant in this building many times. And with this last pregnancy, there were many things that were being attributed to simply being pregnant and resulted in me spending quite a bit of time in the hospital, very ill. And if there had been more awareness around what sorts of things are normal and what sorts of things are not, so that it wasn't always just chalked up to, well, you are female, you are experiencing menopause, you are experiencing other hormonal changes, you are pregnant, these sorts of things. I think that that is too common a refrain, and often very serious health complications are overlooked because of that. And so while I know that we sort of tire and do a lot here to talk about this day of awareness, this day of recognition, I do think it is important, and I think especially we as women are often, I think, encouraged almost to shy away from talking about some of the things that are unique to women's health. And I just firmly believe that if we can do just even a little bit to allow folks to recognize that there are real questions and real things that we should be talking about and asking about, it will result in better health outcomes, and we won't just chalk it up to simply being a female and overlooking what can sometimes be very serious health concerns. So I rise in strong support and thank my colleague for bringing Senate Bill 297 to the floor of the Senate.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of this bill, and I want to applaud my colleague, the senator from District 3, for bringing this forward, and I appreciate that we're going to spend a month acknowledging menopause awareness so that people can become more educated and become more informed. I do wonder if a period of 28 to 42 days might be more appropriate than a full month. But regardless, I think that it is important that anybody who didn't get that joke brushes up on their women's health, because it's important that all of us understand that the health experiences of women and the challenges that we face are different from those of other members of the community, and it's important that we're aware of that and that concerns are not dismissed based on our biology, but that everybody is treated with, I'm going to use my favorite two words again, dignity and respect in the healthcare system, and that we treat each other that way as well. So I'm proud to vote in favor of this bill.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 19, the noes are 2. SB 297 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 298, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to peace officers. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 298 revises the definition of punitive action as the term relates to certain peace officers to include any actions which may lead to denial of an increase either in seniority or compensation for purposes of punishment.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 14, the noes are 7. SB 298 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 301, introduced by Senators Dondero, Loop, etc., revises provisions relating to public employees. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. End of bill.
Senator Dondero, Loop.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 301 adds persons who are employed as a Category 1, 2, or 3 peace officer in the unclassified service of the state to the definition of the employee for purposes of collective bargaining with the executive branch.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 15, the noes are 6. SB 303 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 322, introduced by Senator Taylor and Assemblymember Hansen, revises provisions relating to the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows, Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 322 requires each member of the Board of Regents to complete at least 6 hours of professional development training in the first and third years of each term they serve. The training must include instruction on the open meeting law, and it may also cover other specified topics and any other topic related to the duties of the board. The bill requires the Secretary of the Board to facilitate and assist each board member in completing the required training, and each board member to provide evidence of the completed training to the Secretary. If a board member fails to complete the training or provide evidence of its completion, the Secretary must publish a notice on the board's website and notify other members of the non-compliance. Lastly, each board member is entitled to No, we edited that part out, so that's it. Thank you. We amended it.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21 and noes are 0. SB 322 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 343, introduced by the Senate Committee on Natural Resources, revises provisions relating to governmental administration. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 52, end of Section 52, end of bill.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 343 renames the Agricultural Extension Department as the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension and revises the purpose and management structure of the state 4-H camp. Additionally, the bill prohibits the sale or lease of the state 4-H camp property without legislative approval and updates the membership and term requirements for the state 4-H camp Advisory Council. The bill also repeals several advisory boards, committees, working groups, and advisory boards. It also requires staggered terms for members of the Rangeland Resource Commission. Lastly, the bill exempts certain applicants for post-secondary education positions from background investigations if they hold a professional license in Nevada. Thank you.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Senator Lang. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 343 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 349, introduced by Senator Pizzina, revises provisions relating to anatomical gifts. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2, end of bill.
Senator Pizzina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 349 authorizes a procurement organization to transport the body or part of a deceased donor within the state of Nevada only when medical equipment is necessary to ensure the medical stability of the donation for the purposes of facilitating an anatomical gift. Additionally, this bill authorizes a county coroner to prescribe procedures for the notification of such transport of an anatomical gift within their jurisdiction. So this bill saves lives.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 349 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 352, introduced by Senators Scheibel, et cetera, revises provisions relating to health care. People of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 11 into Section 11, end of bill.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 352 prohibits public and private policies of health insurance, including Medicaid, from discriminating against any person on the basis of actual or perceived race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability. The bill also prohibits a healthcare provider from discriminating against a person on the basis of those same protected characteristics, as well as gender identity or expression. In other words, it codifies into our state statute the anti-discrimination policies that are currently in place at the federal level as part of the Affordable Care Act. And just to address a question that came up during the hearing, hearing. We also did adopt an amendment to this bill, I think it was on the floor yesterday, ensuring that insurance policies would still be able to use age as a factor for determining premiums, as is currently allowed by law, but they wouldn't be allowed to use age in ways that are currently prohibited to discriminate against people. So I hope that all of my colleagues will vote for SB 352.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 17, the noes are 4. SB 352 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 358, introduced by Senator Taylor, requires certain units of government of this state to accept certain forms of payment. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 under Section 1.
Any amendments?
There are none, and a bill.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 358 requires certain units of government of this state to accept from a business entity as payment, debit, payment by debit card, credit card, check, or electronic transfer for any fee, tax, or other debt.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 358 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 395, introduced by Senator Orenshaw, revises provisions relating to autonomous vehicles. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 and Section 2 and a bill.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 395 prohibits an autonomous vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating or combined weight rating over 26,000 pounds, or a vehicle with more than 2 axles that can transport 8 or more passengers from being tested or operated on a state highway unless a human operator is present as a backup. The operator must hold a commercial driver's license, be trained in operating and shutting off the vehicle, and be capable of taking immediate manual control of the vehicle if necessary. Senate Bill 395 is effective upon passage and approval for the purpose of adopting regulations and performing any other preparatory tasks, and on October 1st, 2025 for all other purposes. The bill has a sunset on September 30th of 2035.
Any further remarks from the floor? Senator Rogich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be voting yes on SB 395. The notion of a 26,000-pound autonomous vehicles navigating through our cities and highways without human oversight is unsettling and I believe potentially very unsafe. While I acknowledge the inevitable advancement of technology and the potential benefits it may bring, I am not convinced that we are ready for this transition at this time. I also believe we should consider the broader implications on our workforce. Thank you.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 14, the noes are 7. SB 395 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 405, introduced by Senate Committee on Natural Resources, creates the Transit to Trails Task Force. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 7 and Section 7 and a bill.
Senator Pizzina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 405 creates the Transit to Trails Task Force and sets forth its membership. The task force must identify high-priority areas for a program to expand access to outdoor recreation areas in Nevada using public transit and must apply for grants to expand public transit running to such areas. Finally, the task force must report to the legislature describing its activities, findings, conclusions, and any recommendations for legislation by August 31st of each even-numbered year. I'd also like to thank all of the students who showed up here in Carson City as well as in Las Vegas to testify on behalf of this bill.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 405 has received the constitutional majorities, declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 406, introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, revises provisions relating to civil liability. People of the State of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 into Section 4, end of bill.
Senator Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 406 provides the state, any institution of higher education, or any officer or employee thereof to be immune from civil liability for any damages sustained as a result of an act or omission of the state, institution, officer, or employee in response to or on the basis of the public health crisis caused by the coronavirus disease of 2019 or COVID-19 pandemic. The bill also specifies that the state's immunity from liability applies retroactively to any actions commenced on or after March 12th, 2020, for which a final judgment has not yet been rendered and expires by any limitation on June 30th, 2030.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 17 and noes are 4. SB 406 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 409, introduced by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services, revises provisions relating to the reporting and investigation of child abuse or neglect. People of the State of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2025. End of bill.
Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 409 revises a list of actions relating to a report, investigation, or legal intervention concerning the abuse or neglect of a child for which a person is granted immunity from liability, to include reviewing or providing a consultation or medical opinion concerning certain photographs, x-rays, and other medical tests. Additionally, a court may award reasonable attorney fees and costs to a person required to report suspected or known abuse or neglect of a child who prevails in a civil action, imposing liability against him or her for performing such act.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 409 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 414, introduced by Senators Scheibel, et cetera, revises provisions relating to public office. People of the State of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 12 into Section 12, end of bill.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 414 makes various changes to the financial disclosure requirements for certain public officers and candidates for public office. The measure requires inaugural committees to make certain contributions and expenditures reports. Includes that foreign nationals are prohibited from making contributions or committing to a contribution to inaugural committees. Further, persons elected to constitutional offices are now required to report certain contributions and expenditures related to their transition to that office, and the bill requires a public officer or candidate or their household member to disclose holdings of certain stocks or securities valued at $5,000 or more. So essentially, the bill has two main purposes, or two parts. The first is to ensure that constitutional officers, all 6 of them, if they stand up an inaugural committee, are disclosing those contributions to that committee and the expenditures, just like they would with any other political organization or a campaign fund. And then the other thing that it does is it requires any public officer who currently has disclosure requirements to disclose any interest of more than $5,000 in any corporation. This is to bring us into alignment with what is, the current reality. Because right now, anybody who owns more than 1% interest or 1% of the stock of a particular company is required to make that disclosure. So there's a disparity where a person who owns a small family business might be required to disclose their interest in that business because their share constitutes well over 1%, yet people who have stock values in the millions of dollars in large corporations that don't amount to 1% of the corporation would not have to disclose those interests, even though the amount that they have invested in a large corporation stock way outnumbers the amount that small family-owned businesses might have. So for that reason, I would encourage my colleagues to support SB 414, ensure that everybody's financial interests are being disclosed, whether they own 1%, 2%, or 95% of a business. Anytime that stock is worth more than $5,000, the disclosure should be made. Thank you.
Any further remarks from the floor? Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in support of Senate Bill 414, and I want to thank my colleague from Senate District 9 for bringing this legislation forward. SB 414 strengthens transparency and accountability to Nevada's political system by updating and expanding the state's financial disclosure system. By requiring public officials and candidates to report stock holdings valued at $5,000 or more, this legislation ensures that we are giving voters a clearer picture in terms of any potential conflicts of interest. SB 414 increases oversight of inaugural committees and transition activities for constitutional officers, helping close loopholes and promoting trust in public office. Most importantly, this legislation is a step forward to ensuring that we meet the needs of our voters and continue to hold ourselves accountable to the highest standards of transparency, and I encourage my colleagues to vote in support of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of Senate Bill 414. It is an important transparency bill, as was stated by my colleagues. It applies to all constitutional officers of all parties for any inaugural committee, and I think that's one of the most important factors. The $5,000 thing, we can comply with it. We already meet most of that. But if we have an inaugural committee that blurs the lines between political activity and inaugural activity, and the donors are anonymous, I think that's a disservice to the state. The transparency is absolutely needed, and we need to address this regardless of the party, regardless of the office. We need to have this type of transparency for the people of the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Senator Ellison. Did you want to make remarks on this bill? Oh, okay. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. President. The irony of this bill is that we're requiring transparency, as everybody has just proudly spoken of, about where money's come from, but yet we couldn't ask our student athletes where their money come from. So I will be a no on this bill. Thank you.
Any further remarks on the bill? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 13, the noes are 8. SB 414 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 418, introduced by the Senate Committee on Finance, revises provisions relating to the collection of delinquent contributions by the Public Employees Retirement System. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 418 changes the procedures by which the public employees' retirement system is required to collect delinquent contributions by specifications. Number one, the entity that required to be notified regarding delinquent contributions for each type of public employee, including the Department of Taxation and existing law for local governments. And two, the source of the payment for those delinquent contributions for each type of public employee included the withdrawal of certain payments to local governments in existing law. This bill comes effective upon passage. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 418 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 419, introduced by the Senate Committee on Finance, revises provisions relating to state financial administration. People of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 of the Act becomes effective on July 1, 2025. End of bill.
Senator Rogich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 419 authorizes the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau to contract for support of the Economic Forum and the Technical Advisory Committee on future state revenues and adjusts the deadline for certain Economic Forum reports.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21 and noes are 0. SB 419 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 421, introduced by the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, revises provisions relating to elections. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 into Section 4. End of bill.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 421 requires city and county clerks to recruit election board members for polling places on Indian reservations and colonies unless the Indian tribe declines that recruitment of those polling board members for the polling place. The bill also requires at least one training event in the use of voting machines to take place within the Indian reservation or colony unless the tribe declines. The event must be accessible to an election board member either in person or remotely.
Any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21 and noes are 0. SB 421 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 439, introduced by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, revises provisions relating to alcoholic beverages. People of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2. End of bill.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 439 authorizes an estate distillery to receive neutral or distilled spirits in bulk from a supplier that is not an affiliate of the estate distillery for storage and bottling, which must be segregated in a conspicuous place away from other spirits or alcoholic beverages on the premises. An estate distillery may sell other alcoholic beverages at retail if the estate distillery has obtained the required license or permit and complies with the requirements to purchase liquor from certain wholesalers or importers.
Any remarks from the floor? Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in opposition. I really feel sorry for the little guys that's worked real hard to get to where they're at right now, and they had to go through the process. And I don't think it's fair for a big company to come in at this point in time at the size they are. So I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 19, the noes are 2. SB 439 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 444, introduced by the Senate Committee on Education, revises provisions concerning policies governing the use of certain electronic devices in schools. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 444 requires policies adopted by the Board of Trustees of each school district concerning the use and possession of electronic communication devices by pupils to include a system to rate policy violations, limitations on the use of such devices, and exceptions to limitations on use during an emergency or crisis in order to manage the pupil's health for instructional purposes, and if use of such a device is part of a pupil's individualized education program or plan. Bottom line, it's a cell phone policy.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. Yeses are 21, the noes are 0. SB 444 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 458, introduced by the Senate Committee on Finance, makes a supplemental appropriation to the Office of the Secretary of State for an unanticipated shortfall related to travel, operating, and information services expenses. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 458 makes a supplemental appropriation of $773,148 to the Office of the Secretary of State for an unanticipated shortfall related to operating, travel, and information services expenses.
Any remarks from the floor? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition of Senate Bill 458. I'm very troubled that the Secretary of State office overspent in certain accounts without sufficient funds or statutory authority to do so. And I really feel that a choice that demands accountability. We as citizens must balance our budgets. The Secretary of State is no different. I will tell you, we work very hard in our budget committees to make sure that this state passes a balanced budget. For this reason, I am a no and urge my colleagues to be a no. Thank you.
Any further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the secretary will close the roll. The yeses are 13, the noes are 8. SB 458 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed, and ordered to the Assembly.
That concludes order of business 13 on the 5th agenda and the business of the desk for this legislative day.
Order of business 16, remarks from the floor, introduction of guests. Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we have finished our voting, I would move that we stand in adjournment until the hour of 11 a.m. on Thursday, April 17th, 2025.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.